Okay, if you're an avid player of Civilization 6, you've known this storm was coming for a while. But despite the title, this new expansion is more than just natural disasters and climate change. There is a host of new additions to the game, so much so that the storms themselves may not even be the biggest change to the game. From new leaders, to a world congress, to a complete rework of strategic resources, to a whole new type of currency, Gathering Storm is a major shuffling of everything about Civ 6. I'm Dean from Curse, and if you haven't dug into it yet, here's a look at the major changes in Civilization 6 Gathering Storm. Okay, I know I just downplayed the significance of weather compared to some of the other changes in this expansion, but I mean, it is called Gathering Storm, so let's actually talk about, the storms. Climate issues don't really start cropping up until you start using coal and oil in the later eras. So for most of the game, what you'll be dealing with is random natural disasters. These can be blizzards, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, and volcanic eruptions, all with varying features. The most basic thing they all do is damage or destroy improvements or districts on the tiles they affect. Some of them even have a risk-reward element to them. Floodplains along rivers have fertile soil for farming, and volcanic areas provide a boost to farming and science, for instance. It's lucrative to use that land as long as you don't mind the whole thing where everyone there could die horribly under very deep or hot liquids. But eventually, you'll get a handle on those natural disasters, and you'll get to a point where your cities need power, and you're going to need to give them an energy source to keep them productive. That's when you'll start burning coal and oil to keep them powered, and before long, you'll be dealing with melting polar ice caps. The primary consequence of this is rising sea levels. But fortunately, that doesn't mean all of your coastal cities will just be drowned right off the bat. From the very beginning of the game, you're shown the tiles that would become submerged if sea levels start rising. There are 3 stages of rising sea levels. The tiles without a number will be the first to flood, and tiles marked 2 and 3 will be submerged in the second or third phase of ice cap melting. So even if things start going bad, you'll have time to adjust by investing in renewable energy sources, or you can just push through and try to win it before things get really bad. The World Congress is part of a complete revamp of the way diplomacy works. After a set number of turns, every major leader will come together to vote on a certain set of proposals, which basically act as temporary rule changes. These can be about anything, from increasing the effectiveness of certain resources, to promoting trade with a certain empire, to empowering certain types of city-states, to banning the spread of a particular religion. In the later eras, you may even have the ability to ban the use of fossil fuels to curb climate change, or ban clean energy to accelerate it. Not only that, I'm sorry, hang on, I can't do this anymore. Just give me a second here. Hey, can I talk about the thing yet? Yeah, it's cool? I can? Alright, great. Okay, yeah, so we're gonna come back to diplomacy in just a minute, I promise. I've just got something I need to, Canada is here! Canada is here! Are you ready to build the greatest empire the world has ever known and be super nice to everybody while you do it? Because Wilfrid Laurier is here to make friends and improve diplomatic relationships, and he's never out of friends. You know those snow and ice tiles nobody wants? Canada will take them, build a farm on them. They don't even care. They'll farm in the snow. Canada's so polite, you can't even surprise them with a war. You have to give them the courtesy of advance notice, because even the Greeks think it's too rude to launch a surprise attack on Toronto. You get Mounties, who will build you a national park and then defend that park. And most importantly, you get ice hockey! Right. Anyway, Canada is pretty cool, I guess. Check them out if you want. The Maori are pretty cool too. They start the game in the ocean, already able to sail. That's pretty cool. There's some other new civs to look at too, including that one lady who runs 2 countries. Anyway, back to diplomacy. By the way, Canada's pretty good at it. Actually, there's an entirely new type of currency in the game called diplomatic favor. It's more or less a reward for staying on good terms with other empires. Now, if a country wants to ask you to stop settling close to them or for some other kind of promise, that promise now has to be backed with a certain amount of diplomatic favor. If you accept the promise, you earn that favor. If you don't, or if you break the promise, they get grievances against you. Those grievances aren't really a currency, they're more like a burn book other nations keep against you, so when they decide they want to go blow up your city, they can show everyone else that you basically started it. Diplomatic favor can be used in a bunch of different ways. You can use it as a currency, just like gold, when trading with other nations. You can also use it to buy additional votes and impose your will at the World Congress. Most importantly, diplomatic favor is one of the primary ways for you to earn diplomatic victory points in the late game. The new diplomatic victory is a points-based victory. Basically, you obtain 10 diplomatic points and you win. There's a bunch of different ways to earn these points. Earning the highest score in foreign aid disaster relief emergencies will net you a point, as will researching the Seasteads tech, the global warming mitigation civic, or building the Statue of Liberty wonder. But the World Congress is where you really earn those diplomatic victory points. In the later phases of the game, you'll be able to vote to either award or take away diplomatic victory points from any player, including yourself. The more diplomatic favor you spend on those votes, the more likely you are to be able to overpower the votes of other empires. This is pretty much the main endgame used for the diplomatic favor currency. It's essentially buying your victory points. Strategic resources like horses, iron, and oil have been now split into two categories. There are fuel resources like coal and oil, which will be consumed to power cities and certain types of units. The other strategic resources like horses, iron, and aluminum are mostly just a requirement for training certain types of units. More importantly, strategic resources are now consumable resources. When you obtain a source of them, they start providing you with a certain number of resources per turn, up to a cap. Units or buildings that require that resource now take up a set number of them per turn, rather than simply requiring a source. So let's say you have a pasture of horses. That's earning you 2 horses per turn to your stockpile. If you want to train a chariot or horseman unit, it'll take those horses away from your stockpile. Obviously, that limits your ability to rush production of certain units, but it also has an impact on trade. If you're not really using a particular resource and your stockpile's just sitting there at the cap, then you're essentially wasting your production of them. So that's when you become an exporter of those resources. Trade the ones you're not using to other nations for money, diplomatic favor, and other resources. Because if you don't, they're just going to waste. Of course, that's something you have to play on a case-by-case basis. Just because you have a full stockpile of uranium, that doesn't mean you really want to go selling it to your mortal enemy because, stuff can happen. So there you have it. This has been a totally not biased overview of what you can expect in Civilization VI Gathering Storm. Aside from the major changes, there's plenty more to find. New wonders, new units, and even new government types. But you ought to have a decent idea of what's new now, so get out there and build your own giant death robot. I'll see you next time.